Hello and welcome to this presentation. My name is Julian Plank from the Michigan State University, and in this talk I'm going to present our latest research on parameter tuning and control, a case study on differential evolution with polynomial mutation. The article is authored by myself, Julian Plank, and my co-author and PhD advisor, Kalyan Moydeb. Let me start by talking about differential evolution, and especially what parameters are involved. I should be more precise and say hyperparameters, because that's something that needs to run or need to be defined to run differential evolution. So let's say we have a whole population, and in the beginning we try to expand our ith individual, xi. We do that by choosing 3 different individuals, at least that's the basic version of differential evolution. We select 3 other individuals, xr1, R2, and R3. They can be chosen randomly, or another strategy could be used. So first we have the selection hyperparameter. How are we going to select these 3 solutions? Then secondly, we take the difference between R2 and R3. And what's going to happen is this difference vector will be scaled by the scaling variable f, which needs to be chosen and is often even fixed during the whole run. Then by adding this difference vector to the first individual, we are going to get our donor vector v. And donor vector v will then be crossovered with our original xi. And this crossover, first we have to define how this should take place. So we have the crossover type. And most frequently, either a binomial crossover or an exponential crossover is used. These both crossovers have another parameter, which is usually CR, that's how it's called, which is the crossover rate. Now, potentially because we never want to recreate X, you could have 3 different outcomes. This could create U, U prime, or U double prime. This holds at least in 2 dimensions. In bigger dimensions, there's a much bigger number of possible outcomes. Now, as we could see, there is a couple of hyperparameters that are involved, and there are even some more in other variants. Now, what we're going to look into in this study, can it be beneficial to add another operator on top of this equation? If you really carefully look at the differential evolution mechanism, you're going to see that everything that's used is population information. There's not really a way of escaping from a local optima. Now, polynomial mutation is well known in genetic algorithms to be really useful to escape from local optima quite early, and can be very helpful to be used in general to give some more diversity. Now, when we look at polynomial mutation, we have to basically answer what should be the likelihood to apply polynomial mutation on top of the DE operation. And secondly, what should be the eta variable, which means how far are we going to spread this parameter's exponential distribution. Now, when we look at hyperparameter optimization, there are many different ways how to actually do it. One is parameter tuning, which means we are just doing this in a very offline manner. We have our parameter set P, and given the set, we run the algorithm 1 or multiple times. We look at the outcome, and we try to adapt P to get the best possible outcome. Then we have also parameter control, where we are trying to adapt P over all these generations, which means we start with a P0, which is our initial set, then we create parameter P1, P2, P3, until the algorithm has terminated. Now, something else we could do, because our mating procedure creates always a whole subpopulation, we could actually use different P's in each of these sets. So what we could do, for example, to create the first individual, we use our P11, then we use our P12, and so on, which means we always keep a vector of hyperparameters over the whole run. Now, when we look at the last one, the parameter control in an individual level, what we could do is we actually can let another population evolve over time to find better parameter settings by running the algorithm. It's kind of like running a parameter evolution next to it. And that's what we're going to propose in this study. Now, the contributions of our paper are actually two-way. One, we investigate two different ways of finding hyperparameters, run parameter tuning and also parameter control. In control, we just do it entirely randomly and also in an evolutionary way. And we also investigate, is it useful to add a mutation, in our case, a polynomial mutation, to differential evolution. The hyperparameters we have chosen in our study, this should have already been kind of introduced on the slides before, are first of all for polynomial mutation, the probability of actually doing the mutation, and the eta variable which defines the spread. And then the classical DE variables, selection, how we are selecting these three individuals, what crossover are we executing, how many differences are we taking, what is the scale value, are we adding some jitter, and what is the crossover rate. As you can see, there are all different types of variables. We have categorical ones, integer, float, and binary. So we're in fact solving a mixed variable problem. For parameter tuning, is generally computationally expensive. How did we measure the performance? We were looking how close can we come to the optimum of the run, a classical metric to measure the performance in single objective optimization. And we executed 11 runs, all of them with different random seeds, and then took the average. So this is what we have done for each test problem separately. And we have used a well-known parameter tuning or hyperparameter optimization software called Optuna, available in Python, and we've used TPE sampling, and we ran 100 different trials or 100 different 11 random seeds on all these problems. Random parameter control works as follows. So we have a population, which is xt minus 1. Then to create U, which is our offspring individuals, we use random parameter settings, PT. They're just like a random sampling from this mixed variable configuration. And then with the replacement, some of them will be replaced and some of them won't. The key here is that the parameters are randomly sampled in each iteration. This is quite different in evolutionary parameter control, where each of these populations, xt minus 1 here, for example, has attached a whole parameter configuration. So if we take the pt minus 1, we actually let them evolve with a mating operation, basically on this parameter population, applying another evolutionary algorithm by generating the next parameters pt. And then we use pt to generate the offsprings. And because of the replacement mechanism in DE, we just directly do the replacement in both populations, which means some of them will be replaced and some of them will not be replaced, which could be really useful to keep only the good parameter settings and running a meta-evolution. Now let's talk a little bit about results, especially starting with parameter tuning. So we've applied parameter tuning for each of these test problems. And as I said before, we used Optuna, 100 trials with specific 11 random seeds. What's now important, we don't want to just fit the configuration based on 11 random seeds. So what we have done now, we look at the 11 random seeds as a training set and applied this best configuration to completely new 11 random seeds and see how they performed there. In general, if the training and the testing, if there would no be difference, this would translate to a complete horizontal line here on the bottom, which means the best configuration for a specific problem stayed the best configuration on other random seeds. So this here illustrates the best configuration found on sphere 2 using these 11 random seeds and illustrates how this has changed on other 11 random seeds. So if it's vertical, if it's like on the very bottom here, that actually means it stayed the best configuration also on the new seeds. If there is a gap, this always illustrates choosing 11 new random seeds, it didn't stay the best. And what's interesting, if you look at this for some problems, for example, estrogen with 50 variables, it turns out the configuration we have found to be good actually performs really, really poor if you choose other random seeds. And the same holds for Krewang and holds for with 2 variables and also 30 variables. And this is something quite interesting to investigate, because for the optimization problem, we have to fix some seeds. But we are always trying to generalize, which means the configuration should work no matter what random seed we choose beforehand, which can be quite challenging. So actually, I encourage researchers on hyperparameter optimization to look at these like as a training and a test set, and always measure this testing error. Secondly, we have looked at the different methods I was talking about before. We have found one method that performed good across all test problems. We used that using our parameter tuning approach, which is this setting here. First of all, what I want to mention is quite interesting that this setting has polynomial mutation with an eta variable of 15, and the mutation is applied by to 5% to each of these individuals. So this is the best setting we have found across all problems. Then we have our random parameter control and our evolutionary parameter control. So one statement we can make that the random parameter control in general was not really a good choice, which is not surprising. For some problem it was good, but if we average over all problems, it did not really have a very good performance. It was good here once for Krewang with 30 variables, and it was once good here for Rosenberg with 50 variables, but otherwise it was never really a good choice. Second, we can make that statement that the evolutionary parameter control outperforms our random parameter control. On some problems, it was significantly better even than our static setting. For example, if you look at the green lines being on the very bottom, we can find a few problems where it was significantly better. We have others where it was quite close with the performance, and we have some where it even was flipped. So it would be a little bit bold to make that statement that this evolutionary parameter control was always better than having a really nicely tuned parameter tuning approach before and then just choose the setting across all problems. However, I think the contribution is that we actually looked at 2 different approaches, and one challenge in evolutionary parameter control is these settings for the mating, they have to be figured out on the fly, which actually is quite challenging. It's another problem which is solved on the side, which sometimes might actually require a lot more generations. If you look at some more results, I want to mention something else. So first of all, this is the setting with polynomial mutation, and it has found to be in general a lot better choosing the best individual as R1 than just randomly choosing 3 individuals. And second, for some problems, our evolutionary parameter control showed better results, but we can't really make that statement one was significantly better than another. The conclusions and future work. So I encourage researchers, if you look at parameter tuning, choosing random seeds can become a problem. I know there are some other methods that randomly choose random seeds and not fixing them across the hyperparameter optimization problem. But it's always important to finally find a robust configuration that does not depend on any random seed. So I feel like often if we fix random seeds, we really should make that counter check how generalizable are the solutions we have found. Second, parameter control can be quite challenging. It's another problem we solve over time. In our study, it has not found to be better than having a real nicely parameter tuned approach. And secondly, that's what I already said. It needs to be figured out what random seeds we use, and this needs some investigations how we actually directly implement our hyperparameter optimization. In the perfect world, it's actually a noisy problem or a stochastic problem because our performance with different random seeds is in fact non-deterministic. Finally, some people might know me. I'm the main contributor and also founder of a framework called pymoo. For the new version, which is currently almost out for release, it might already be out when we are watching this video. So the version 0.6.0. Anyway, it's already available in the release branch right now, is hyperparameter tuning. So we have a method now that actually allows to find the best hyperparameters based on a specific algorithm and problem. We can do this on a single run. We can also do this on multiple runs, which should help researchers to actually perform hyperparameter tuning for their problems. If someone is interested in extending this module and adding new features, please let me know. We are always really thankful if you have new contributions or new people working on something. And I really think it's a nice idea to provide people these type of tools out of the box in the framework. Well, thank you so much for your attention. I'm very happy to answer questions now.